you've gained like 5 or 6 pounds of muscle and you've dropped your body fat under 10%, right, at this point. And how old are you, Glenn?
65 in October.
There we go. So we always hear these people putting those numbers in the way of things. And you did that really in just a few months. So what do you think made the transformation possible?
We are about to launch.
All right, we are back in the TNT Strength studio live in Oakland, California. And this is going to be podcast episode number 197. Today is another in our series of our TNT Strength Success Series, we like to call it. And I have with me my much more handsome, better looking twin brother, Glenn Elkins, who is crushing it in the TNT Strength studio. And so he was kind enough to join me today, and he's going to tell us all about his adventure. So thanks for joining me, Glenn. And, you can give a little background about yourself if you like, anything you want, and then, kind of introduce yourself to the audience. And then I'm going to hit you with some questions. We're just going to have a nice chat and let it flow.
I'm happily retired these days after 4 decades plus in industrial business. Also recovered CPA by training and education. And I stumbled into TNT in February, about 6 months ago. And we're here to kind of share my experience.
Nice. So that goes right into my first question, which was what first brought you to TNT Strength and what were you hoping to accomplish when you started?
So I live close by and I, noticed TNT in the neighborhood and curious because I saw the advertisement or billboard that said, 30 minutes twice a week. And that really piqued my curiosity. Historically, would go to the gym and do the 1 hour plus thing and repeat it, injure myself and all those things. So the concept sounded really intriguing. So I stopped in and gave it a go and been at it for 6 months now.
Yeah, fantastic. So can you paint a picture of where you were sort of physically and mentally before beginning your training journey with us?
So back to my 20s, by background, I was an amateur adrenaline junkie, and I ran some marathons and lots of half marathons and 10Ks and 5Ks, and also long distance cycling, including 1,000-mile trips in Europe and Asia and so forth. So I fancied myself as a reasonable amateur endurance athlete. And then life happened, business, children, family, and that sort of quashed the fitness effort other than weekend warrior type stuff.
Sure.
So, I over the 4 years, I put on some weight, lost some fitness, didn't really focus on health or self-care as a priority. And retirement came. I sold my business in 22 and decided to have a turn and make self-care kind of a priority and fitness as a feature.
Nice
Point. And then I stumbled into you guys in February.
Had you tried like any kind of other fitness programs or training styles before working with us? What made, and if so, what made our approach stand out? I mean, you mentioned the 30 minutes. That does catch a lot of people by surprise, right? Because they're convinced that it needs a lot more. But had you done any other type of workout systems, CrossFit, or been to another gym or worked with a trainer or anything?
Yes. Over the years, I've dabbled in a variety of commercial gyms, and my experiences were pretty mixed and nothing I really was motivated to stick with. Sometimes I'd injure myself. Other times I just felt like there wasn't really a clear path or sustainability to the approach that I was experiencing. So at TNT, I've I've felt different.
What were your initial impressions when you came to work with us into the TNT sort of method, if you will? Was there anything that surprised you about the workouts or how we implement them?
Well, it's really turnkey, and you guys make it quite easy in that the trainers record your progress. They set up the machines for you. They help you with your technique and approach, and they stagger body muscle groups with every visit, so it's a real methodical scientific approach. It feels.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things I try to tell people is like, really, you just have to show up, right? Because we like take care of everything.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
there's very little I have to do or
yeah,
contemplate other than the work.
yeah. As long as you come in ready to do it, right? Which is handy. So, how do you feel like your body was responding in those first few weeks of training with us?
There was in 30 minutes a surprising amount of soreness and recovery involved. So I was grateful to have the 3 days in between the sessions to
Right.
sort of recover.
Was there a moment when you realized that this is really working? If so, kind of what triggered your realization?
Well, having self care in retirement as a principal activity, I'm really focused on nutrition, sleep, fitness. I do a lot of running and cardio work on the side in between TNT.
Sure.
And it's all kind of coalescing together with this approach here with TNT. And I've really improved my fitness ability and my muscle mass
Yeah.
considerably.
So speaking of that, you've gained like 5 or 6 pounds of muscle, and you've dropped your body fat under 10%, right at this point. And how old are you, Glenn?
65 in October.
There we go. So we always hear these people putting those numbers in the way of things, and you did that really in just a few months. So what do you think made the transformation possible at your age?
Well, in my case, I'm pretty focused on the approach and disciplined in what I do. And one of the things you guys emphasize that I really took to heart is the nutritional aspect, protein forward nutrition, which I've really ramped up since I've been here. And I even started some creatine.
Nice.
As a supplement. And all of that lifestyle shift has contributed to the performance.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, this is, you're like our favorite kind of thing, because the reality is, we tell everyone that we essentially guarantee, right, that anyone who comes in here and spends a reasonable amount of time will get stronger. But we don't guarantee that they will achieve their body composition goals, right? Because we don't have control over those elements, right? And we obviously can encourage it, and we know how to support it, and we know what kind of guidelines to give, but doesn't mean you're going to implement those guidelines, right? So you're like the perfect case study, because we do have clients, and every gym does, that haven't achieved their body composition goals. They are getting stronger, right? But they're not losing that 10 pounds or whatever, because they don't implement the other parts of the strategy, right? They won't change their nutrition habits, or they're not really focusing on am I getting enough protein, all those little things. And each one of those little things is like, we think of it like a lever you can pull, right? That will have an impact. And we know exactly what those levers are, but we can't make you pull them. So, that's the big problem.
And it's not easy to do.
No, yeah.
In my case, being retired and having the ability to focus on nutrition and fitness and lifestyle, I'm really disciplined in the approach. But in prior years, when I was a working man, it was very different.
Sure. So what kind of changes have you noticed beyond just the scale, like energy, sleep, or daily performance, or even carry over into your other activities like running and stuff like that?
Well, we do a lot of leg strengthening work here, more so than I've ever done in other strength training. And that really helps in the running, cardio, cycling world.
Yeah.
So I've noticed much easier jaunts up the hills.
Nice.
Generally, I'm feeling stronger. When I lift something relatively heavy, the mattress, whatnot, to
right.
get to bed, I'm noticing it's much lighter.
Yeah. It's a great thing. We get a lot of those sort of subtle feedback cues, right? And those we love those kind of stories because we had a lady who's our age in their 60s, and she's like she went on a trip somewhere, and she's like, I was the only one who could easily put my stuff in the overhead compartment, and I ended up doing it for all my friends. What I mean? I was like, that's awesome. But it's those little things you take for granted until you realize, like, suddenly, like, you've been picking up that 50 pounds of kitty litter for years, and it wasn't as hard to put it in the trunk of the car or whatever. Yeah. And those are little good things that help, with daily activities. So, do you feel like your strength has impacted, confidence or mindset or other stuff that outside of the gym?
I think holistically, the entire lifestyle approach that TNT certainly fosters, but that I'm pursuing with nutrition and sleep hygiene and general health span
Yeah.
matters. I'm feeling at this stage of the game well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And sleep is critical. You mentioned it multiple times, and it is another one of those things that I think many people underestimate the impact that it has on all aspects of your life, but as a huge component of being more successful with the work that you put in the gym to recover outside of the gym, right? One of the things that we try to get people to understand, obviously, is that the workouts don't produce the result. The result happens when you're recovering, and if you're not recovering, you're not allowing your body to produce those results. So not hitting the protein needs, not getting the sleep taken care of, all those little things will limit the ultimate success of the work you're putting in. You could be coming in and putting in that hard work, but if you're not covering the other bases, you'll be like, how come I'm not getting as much, right? And then people get frustrated.
In that vein, I'm noticing here in the gym, if I have a bad couple nights sleep and I come in to work out, there's a noticeable limitation in what I can lift.
For sure. Yeah. It's so important. So what do you feel like right now? What does a typical training session look like for you? Like, and how has your mindset shifted around exercise over time after spending 6 months with us?
I agree with something I've heard you guys state, that strength training is really foundational in overall fitness. I didn't feel that way before as a marathoner, but now I really, at this age especially, I feel like resisting sarcopenia and decline, physical decline that happens in your 60s is critical to health span going forward. And I feel like if I continue this approach and the other lifestyle factors, that I'm gonna have a better time in retirement.
For sure. Yeah, it's amazing, and it's dramatic. I see it all the time. Guys come in here that are younger than me, or us, complaining about things, and I'm like, well, how old are you? And they're like, I'm 53 or whatever, and I'm like, well, you gotta stop crying about it because I got 10 years on you, And I love that, those little things. Like, I remember I took a plane up to Vegas for a conference, like a strength conference, and there was a couple on the plane that was sitting next to me, and I said, what are you guys doing? And the guy's like, my wife took me, as a surprise for my 50th birthday. And I was like, I remember my 50th birthday. And they just looked at me like, what? I'm like, yeah, it was fun. It was a long time ago. They're like all shocked, So that's a great feeling. People are like, what? You're 63?
I remember about a year and a half ago, I went over to Europe and I threw my back out hauling luggage around and whatnot. And I was really struggling for a good couple months.
I bet.
Getting the back to recover. And since coming here, I've strengthened my back.
Sure.
Because you guys work even on the muscles in my neck to the point where I don't feel like that would happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. So do you have a favorite exercise or a favorite piece of equipment or something that you love to hate?
Well, we rotate muscle groups and machines in here, but the one that Eric, my trainer, always takes me to is the neck machine every day.
That's awesome.
Initially, I was, saying, wait a minute, the neck, I don't want to throw this out.
Right.
And it's great. I've really strengthened the neck and worked up the scale of weight that I can move.
Sure.
And that's been surprising.
Yeah.
And the back as well.
We're big proponents of the neck training. It was like, one of the things that definitely sets us apart. I think, there's not too many other gyms, even in the Bay Area, that do that. There's a few, and they're really sort of peers of ours, competition, but also colleagues, right, with a similar approach. And other than that, like you would almost never see it unless you're in like a professional sports team, like football or like a really well-structured college program that has really good strength and conditioning, right? It's often overlooked, and our bodies can recognize weaknesses within the system, and your body only allows you to do those things that it knows it can control and safely and so forth. So that's why we're limited without even realizing it. The stronger we get from the center out, from the ground up, the more our body will let us try to do. And having a stronger neck, not only is it good for your posture and can be protective if you took a tumble or were in a car crash or something, but it actually makes you run faster, jump higher, you know what I mean? Because your body's more stable and it can control that stuff. So it has a giant impact. People always ask, why am I doing this? And that's why we want you to be strong and safe. We all have the potential to fall down or slip or be in a car crash or take a tumble. As working with athletes, which I have at very high levels, we actually have, full like concussion prevention protocols and stuff, because if we're working with I used to do a lot of work with combat athletes, like UFC and jiu-jitsu and judo guys and all these, football players. They get a lot of, potential neck stuff. And boxers, right? We need really strong necks, but we just realize that it's beneficial to everyone. How do you stay consistent and motivated, week after week, with your own stuff? You're clearly doing the work, right? So what works for you to help with that?
It takes discipline. I just have that natural inclination. And when I see the results and the body fat go down and I feel better with my other day-to-day activities, it's just self-reinforcing.
You'd be looking good with your James Bond tux on.
Well, I don't know about that.
How is working with us kind of change your expectations of what's possible as you age, or has it?
I was subjectively of the mindset that I would muscle wise, I was going to in a state of decline. It's just a natural part of the aging process, and I was resigned to accept that, and now I'm not.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, what's amazing, right, is not only have you've not just maintained strength, right, you're clearly improving. You've added muscle into your body, and we see it all the time here, right? But it does in the big population, right? People just don't believe that it's possible, right? They think, you have to be some kind of special guy, or you need to be taking some kind of exogenous hormone stuff, or right, or you need to be doing other things, and those are all topics that are we've discussed on our podcast. Not and we don't judge them in any way, right? Or kind of like we're tool agnostic, right? We don't have anything against hormone manipulation, but you're a great example of someone who is just making good choices and seeing those things happen. And we have people older than you, obviously, that are also adding muscle, in their 70s and their 80s, and it's just great to know that it's true. And we tell people all the time that you can get stronger at any age. The oldest person I've worked with to date is 96 years old. Our current oldest client here is 92. And, I've seen this happen in person, right, over and over and over again in my career. So that's what we like to say. We work with all ages and abilities. You just have to be willing to put in the work, right?
It's been surprising to me that I could build muscle and build strength at this stage of the game. So it's really thank you. It's been a great thing.
So what does recovery look like for you? Because you say you have your sleep habits, because you've mentioned that multiple times. Do you think about stress management as part of your self-care routine, or have you changed that self-care routine dramatically along with everything else?
So one of the beautiful things of retirement is I have the capacity and time to attend to recovery and focus on self-care, sleep, nutrition, and so forth. I have to admit, I walk out of here sometimes very sore the next day.
Sure.
So I listen to my body. I just use my intuition. If I'm feeling the pain of the squats, I might not do that hill run the next morning.
Right. That's awesome. So that's smart too. A lot of times people are, especially unfortunately, I find with people that have been or are real like focused endurance athletes, right? They have a really hard time knowing that it's okay to take a day off, right? That was unplanned, and that they're not going to lose anything. Runners almost most of all hate to miss a run, right? Cyclists as well, but really runners. And it shows wisdom, right? To respect the process and to understand, like, you can still get that run in. You just take 24 more hours off before you do it, right? It can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And with strength training, I do a lot of work with athletes at distance. And before we had our virtual world stuff and everything, I used to create programs for people. I still do. And often I build into the program a diminishing training schedule. So, like, rather than everybody thinks they got to go Monday, Wednesday, Friday for the rest of their life, right? It's built into the plan. Like, the first 2 weeks they go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the next 2 weeks it's 5 workouts in 2 weeks, and then the next 2 weeks it's only 4 workouts in 2 weeks, and the next 2 weeks, right? And they don't understand why that's important, because we know you're getting stronger and stronger and stronger. You actually need more recovery to balance that out. And then if we're balancing in conditioning with that, like, one of our favorite routines is we've talked a lot on the podcast about it, which we feel is very sustainable for almost anyone, is I like to program in 2-week blocks. So what we look at is, if I'm working with a distance athlete, I'm creating a plan. I'll say, rather than thinking I got to go Monday, Wednesday, Friday with my strength or whatever, we'll break it in over 2 weeks. And in the first week, you'll go strength on Monday, conditioning on Wednesday, strength on Friday. The second week, you'll go conditioning on Monday, strength on Wednesday, conditioning on Friday. So over the 2 weeks, you get 3 of each, right? And it turns out to be very sustainable. And you always have a day off from whatever you just did. You hit it, you got a day off. And you hit something different now and have that day off, right? You don't do strength too close together, right? Like we already do. But that becomes one you can almost use forever. Another thing is to recognize, if you are someone who is tracking meticulously, which you should be, if you're not recovered, you'll know. What I like to say is the numbers don't lie, right? If you come in and you hit that workout and you usually can do 200 pounds 10 times in the chest press, and you only got 7, you know what I mean? Okay, that's telling you something. But then that happens several workouts in a row. I could only get 7 again, or I only got 6. Like, it's going down. That means you're not recovered, right? And the easiest thing to do, which people don't get, is add more rest. You know what I mean? And they don't want to do it. They think, how do I get past this? Do I need more sets? Do I need to, you know what I mean? Do I need some secret supplement that I haven't tried? No, you just need time off. I was working with my own coach years ago, and he was planning my workouts, and he was another guy like us who trains very minimally, and he was in charge. So he would tell me exactly what my goal was each time I went in the gym. Here's the weight. Here's how many reps I want you to try to hit, blah, blah, blah. He was designing all that. And I went in one day and there was a goal, and I was doing single leg presses, and I built up to a considerable amount. So I was doing 300 pound single leg presses. And that was the goal for the day. And I got on the thing and I literally couldn't move it. It didn't budge. And I emailed him, I was like, I literally couldn't do it, right? You told me this was my goal and it didn't budge. He's like, okay, I want you to take 5 days off and then do it again, right? And I just did that. I just didn't do anything. I went back and I was able to do the whole set and that was the only thing I did, was just rest. And it was like a miracle. And that was one of my like epiphany moments, right? Like, wow, this is important, right? Just a little extra recovery. And people don't get that.
I noticed that. I took a week off, just take a holiday with my daughter.
And it happens organically, right?
And and after a week off, I came back in here and was breaking records and feeling strong.
Right. And we expect that. So what's funny is the standard person thinks, well, I just had this vacation, so I'm weaker, right? And we expect people to set PRs every time they took that break, right? Like, oh, you've been in Europe for a month? They're like, yeah, so you're going to give me lighter weights today? No, we're not giving you lighter weights. We're going to start right where you were, and you're probably going to break records on everything, right? And that's what happens most of the time. And people are always shocked, right? And it's like, yeah, you've just been charging your batteries, right? You've been walking and relaxing and eating extra food and, right, and having fun. Yeah, so it's going to work for sure. So what would you say to someone like yourself, over 60, who thinks, it's too late to get in shape or build muscle?
It's not too late, and I'm experiencing that myself. I have a 90-year-old mother, or she'll be 90 in August, and I'm encouraging her, if not pushing her, to do this even at that stage.
That's fantastic.
Because I'm with the program. I'm convinced it works.
Yeah, that's awesome. And has your success with working with this influenced other stuff, people around you? Relationships? Are people noticing changes in your fitness or your physique? Or
I get occasional massage once a month or every couple months, and the fellow, my masseuse, he last visiting looked at me. He said, "Are you taking something?" I said, "No." He said, "What the heck's going on with you?"
Yeah, that's
so
awesome.
It was really, he was surprised.
Right. That's a great compliment. So looking forward, do you have any specific, goals or aspirations, for what you're hoping to achieve, physically, mentally, otherwise, are you thinking about new things, maybe a little bodybuilding competition coming up, a little underwear modeling?
I think I'm past that. But, I wonder at some point where I plateau in this process and then what that looks like going forward, because obviously I'm not continually, endlessly build muscle mass to infinity. So, I'm sort of contemplating how that looks.
Yeah. And there's, there's definitely, limitations, but for both genetics and relating to all of where we are, innate stuff. But that being said, you're also making not just physiological, sort of in the sense of actual new muscle tissue or those fibers, but you actually are getting neurological benefits, not just, and I mean cognitive benefits, but also in your nervous system, how you recruit muscle and so forth. And sometimes without getting necessarily heavier or you feeling like I'm adding more muscle, you can still continue to kind of eke out new gains. Your body finds a way, to pull that stuff in. And for strength training or just for life, those are all good things. As a, but the other side of it sometimes is, when people do the same thing too much, like especially with cardio, let's say they're trying to lose weight and they're like, I've been doing spinning, 3 days a week for the last 7 years, you know what I mean? And I'm like, you know what? You need to stop spinning, right? Because you're like hyper adapted to that activity. You need to throw a curveball into the system. And that's something else that you've noticed that we take care of, right? Because we don't just do the same 10 exercises every single time. And that unaccustomed stimulus is one of the things that allows your body to feel the need to continually adapt, right? Our bodies are super adaptive. And so we need to switch things up. And that's, we manipulate that for you, changing the load, changing the sequence, changing the, all those things. And there's a method to that, right? It's not just a random thing. So that's another thing, like we discussed earlier, that TNT takes the get. You don't have to think about it. You just show up. Your job: show up, be prepared to work hard, go take care of it, and we will handle the rest of it. So yeah, that's fantastic. All right, well, I think we're gonna wind it up right there. That was great. I appreciate your time. We short and sweet. I like to keep it that way. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Too bad Sir Winston couldn't come and be with us. The second most handsome guy after Glenn. So yeah, I appreciate it. Any parting words before you run away?
Only in conclusion, just repeating 30 minutes twice a week works.
Yeah.
And I've been surprised and pleased.
Fantastic. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Truth Not Trends podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us, whatever platform you are on. And also always share these podcasts with a friend. If you want to find out about TNT Strength and training with us live in the studio in Oakland, California, visit our website at www.tntstrength.com. You can also call us right here in the studio, 510-768-5421. If there's a guest you'd love for me to talk to or a topic you want me to dig into, shoot me an email at TAKU@tntstrength.com. That's TAKU@tntstrength.com. And whatever you do, get rid of that stupid blue bow suit.
Test.
I think it'll be okay.
Mixed and edited by Desmond McNeese for We Mixed It, LLC. Go to whatsoundsawesome.com.
He'll figure it out.